Good morning, everyone. It is Friday. I have to look at the exact day. It is Friday, January the 8th, 2021. It is currently 10:40 a.m. Central Time. I'm here at Victory Baptist Church, and it's time, once again, class, for another Bible study exercise. Now, this is where I take something from the Bible. I kind of design a Bible study exercise. That means I'm going to do part of the Bible study for you, and then I try to give you something to work on yourself. Now, this is design. One of the reasons I've been doing this is obviously because of COVID-19, at least for my church. Right now, we're not being able to meet because of the situation locally, and the hospitals well above capacity to take care of people, and we don't want to do anything that would contribute to that problem. So currently, we're not having in-person services. I'm looking for the next opportunity that we can have one, because sometimes, like, okay, we'll have one this week and then maybe not have another one. So I'm looking for every opportunity to do what we can. But I know that when I can't fix that problem, I know there's always something I can do, and that's turn on this microphone and provide my people the opportunity to engage in Bible study, to dig into God's Word, to try to give them some spiritual nourishment. So I envision when I do these Bible study exercises that the people in my church are taking the Bible study exercise, and they can sit around a kitchen table, sit in the living room, maybe the family, husband, wife, whomever, they get together and they listen, and then they're done listening to me, and then they can pull out their Bible, they can pull out their reference tools, and then they can work together digging into the scriptures to take that Bible study even further and to engage in meaningful Bible study. That is the vision for these Bible study exercises, primarily first for my church, but then for anyone else. For those of you, maybe your church isn't having in-person services. Maybe your church is having in-person services, but you don't feel comfortable going right now because of COVID, and you're staying home, and you don't feel like you're getting enough spiritual nourishment. Because in some churches, they're like, oh, we'll live stream, one service a week. Or, in some cases, it seems like they've almost reduced the teaching instead of increasing the teaching. So if I can kind of supplement what you're getting and add to it and say, hey, here's a Bible study exercise, work on it, then feel free to join us in the Bible study exercise. And I tell you all the time, feel free to send me what you discover. Look, it's so, I really mean this, okay? It's not, I don't say this just as some kind of manipulation technique to get you to do the Bible study exercise. I really mean this. Whenever you do these Bible study exercises, what you discover, what you find, send it to me. Send me what you discovered, what you found, because it helps me. Because I'll look at yours and go, wow, I'd missed that completely. Or, oh, wow, that's a unique perspective. Oh, look at that cross-reference. I never thought about that. Oh, look at what they think this means. Oh, wait, that's an interesting interpretation. And then I can struggle with it and think about it. In many cases, it'll bring me right back to the microphone to do another broadcast and maybe create another Bible study exercise that you helped write. All right. So, definitely feel free to send it to me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I don't say that just so that I can say, hey, we got 60 emails today. No, I say that because I'm like, oh, look, this is really challenging stuff. So that is why I ask you to do that. It's for my own spiritual benefit. It's like getting 60 emails, all containing many Bible studies, and I can look at I'm basically, you're helping feed me spiritually, right? So definitely do that. And of course, members of Victory Baptist Church, you're free, obviously, at any time, 24/7, to hop into the Slack channel, the VBC Slack channel, and start chatting away about the Bible study exercise that you have been working on. Now, so that's just kind of a little background, a little explanation for why we do this. And who knows, maybe this Bible exercise will have to be the thing that people from VBC use on Sunday if we're not able to do any live streaming on Sunday. All right, so here we go. Are you ready? All right, now we're going to start this Bible study exercise kind of in a different way. We're not going to start with the Bible, all right? Here's what I want to start with. I want to start with the 4 most fundamental concepts of physics. Now, it would be interesting now if I was with people who were in front of me, like if we were having this Bible study exercise together, you'd just walked into the church and we're sitting here at this table. I would ask you, what are the 4 most fundamental concepts of physics? What are the four most fundamental concepts of physics? I checked this on a number of sources to make sure that this is correct. And as far as I can tell, this is correct. There may be someone who's got advanced degrees in physics who may disagree. And you feel free to email me at newsif@yahoo.com to tell me where I'm wrong. But I believe that it is still true that the four most fundamental concepts of physics are the following. Number one, classical mechanics. Classical mechanics, or you could also refer to them as the laws of motion. Classical mechanics, or the laws of motion. That's one of the fundamental concepts of physics. Classical mechanics, or the law of motion. Next, number two, electromagnetism. Electromagnetism, that's number two. Now, these are the four fundamental concepts of physics. Number one, classical mechanics, or the law of motion. Electromagnetism. Number three, relativity. And number four, thermodynamics. Let's go through those again. Classical mechanics, the laws of motion, electromagnetism, relativity, and thermodynamics. Now, here's an important question I want you to consider. If laws exist that govern physics, if we can agree that, are there laws that govern physics? And if you say yes, there are laws that govern physics. If you say yes, here's a follow-up question. If laws exist that govern physics, then who established such laws and who enforces those laws or make them operable? Who makes them operate? Who makes them work? Where did these laws come from? Did they just arise by chance? How do these laws that govern physics, how do they work? Where did they come from? Who makes them operable? How and why does the immense universe function in a precise manner with very little in the way of random and erratic movement? Why is that? Now, these are very important questions. These are very important questions that I want you to consider. So let's go through this all again. There are four most fundamental, the four, I should state it this way. The four most fundamental concepts of physics are classical mechanics, the law of motion, electromagnetism, relativity, and thermodynamics. If laws exist that govern physics, then who establishes such laws and who enforces these laws or make them operable? So where did the laws come from? Who put them there? Who enforces them? Who makes them operable? Where does all that come from? These are something that you should really think about. How and why does this universe function in a precise manner with very little in the way of random and erratic movement? Now, I know I've said some of those things in different ways and stated it in different ways, but I'm just trying to state it in different ways so that you get the idea of what I'm asking you to think about, what I'm asking you to consider, right? Here are these fundamental principles. Well, are these laws? Are these laws govern how physics works? Where do the laws originate? Who makes them operable? Who makes them work? Who enforces them? Why does the universe seem to function? And why does it seem to why does it seem to function in such a precise manner with very little in the way of random, erratic movement? I can think that's a good way of putting it. That's a question you have to ask yourself. Now, from a biblical, theological perspective, we believe the answer is very, very simple. We believe that the answer is really kind of encapsulated. It's kind of summarized in the opening verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. We believe God is the cause of all of this. He is the lawgiver. He's the one who structured everything. He created everything. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. But the Bible goes beyond just that one simple statement that seems to encapsulate the reason why all of this works. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Even though that verse is so well known, it's so profound because here's God. He's the beginning of everything. He's the reason. He's the lawgiver. And if there is a God and he is the creator and he created heaven and earth, then not only is God the cause of everything, He is the purpose for everything. So we can answer why. We can answer the questions of why. We can answer the questions of where did it all come from? And we can answer the question of why does it all exist and why do we exist? It's all found in God. All right. God is the answer to all of those questions. But the Bible goes beyond just Genesis 1. It adds to our understanding of this. And the passage I want to look for our Bible study exercise is in the book of Colossians. Colossians chapter 1. Colossians chapter 1. All right. If we go to verse 13, Colossians chapter 1, verse 13, we'll add a little context here. Colossians chapter 1, verse 13. Who hath delivered us from the power of darkness and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. Now that would be speaking of Jesus Christ. And it is in Christ, in whom, in Christ, in the Son of God, we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins. It is in Christ that we have redemption and we have the forgiveness of sins. It's through his blood, through his sacrificial death. Verse 15. Who, speaking of Christ, speaking of the Son of God, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. So Christ is the image of the invisible God. Christ makes the invisible God visible, right? And he is the firstborn of every creature. He's the firstborn of every creature. Now, I know in church history, some have tried to take that to say, see, he was the first thing God created. It's the idea of being the firstborn of every creature. He is the ultimate cause of everything. He brings everything into existence. I'm going to just look really quick. I'm going to look here really quick at another translation. I didn't think about this till just right now. All right, we could make that part of the Bible study exercise, but I don't think I'm going to do that. But we'll see. I'm going to read Colossians 1 and a different translation here. The Son, speaking of Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. So they use the term firstborn as well. So I would challenge you, because there are cults out there that grab onto that and say, hey, Jesus was created by God. He is the firstborn. He's the first thing God created. I think you should do a little bit of work on that term firstborn. All right. In fact, let's do something really quick. I'm going to look at something. I'm going to add this to our Bible study. This wasn't my original goal, but I don't think we can't overlook it. We can't overlook it, all right? We can't just overlook this term. So I'm going to look it up here. The term firstborn is this, all right? Here we go. It is this Greek word.
Strong's G 4416. Prototokos.
Prototokos, that is the Greek word. It is used 9 times. And you may want to look at all the places it is used. All right? That's all the places that it is used, where it speaks of, and you can just look at them. You should look them all up, all right? You should do a little bit of I want you to do a little bit of a mini word study on that Greek word for firstborn. I'm going to do something else here. I'm going to go to Colossians. I'm going to go to Colossians 1:15, and I'm going to pull up Bible Hub, BibleHub.com. Very important. All right. Okay, I'm going to read this from a number of translations. I think most of them use firstborn. You see, the New Living Translation states it this way. Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. They don't use the term firstborn. They just say that he was supreme over all creation. He existed before anything was created, and he is supreme over all creation. All right? I'm going to see here. Most of the translations, in fact, it looks like almost all of them, use the term of firstborn of creation. Again, that term is controversial because of some of the debates that happen in church history. I'm going to look here. All right? All right, here's just the very first commentary that I pulled up. The firstborn of every creature, all right? The grammatical construction here will bear either the rendering of our version or the rendering begotten before all creation, whence comes the begotten before all worlds of the Nicene Creed. Okay, you can look at the Nicene Creed if you need to. But the whole context shows that the latter is unquestionably the true rendering. For as has been remarked from ancient times, he is said to be begotten and not created. All right? So the idea is he is the begotten Son of God. He is not created. It's the idea of firstborn. So let me read that again. The grammatical construction here will bear either the rendering of our version or the rendering begotten before all creation. And they like the idea begotten before all creation, not the firstborn. They think that term works better because he's begotten, not created. All right? And I think it's the idea here is that the idea contained in the word firstborn is not only sovereignty above all the kings of the earth, but also likeness to God and priority to all created being. All right. So it's not referring to him being the first created thing. It's referring to him being first in superiority and sovereignty, that he's first, he's above everything else. He is supreme to everything else. He is begotten, not made. So just very important. You may want to do a little bit of work on this term. I'm also going to look, give me 1 second. I'm going to see if the Bible dictionary here, I've got to lean way over here, if it has an entry. All right. This was not the original plan, but as soon as I realized, well, when I put that in greater context, I'm like, well, this does raise up a lot of questions. And depending on the church you've gone to, you may not have done much. You may not have done much study here. All right. Yes. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, we could do a lot of work here. The Bible Dictionary, the Nelson's New Illustrated Bible Dictionary, on page 452, has a big, now I won't say a big, I would say a very well written, or I'll put it this way, a lot of information in this entry for the term firstborn. And they specifically focus on just the firstborn and the normal idea as we would understand the firstborn and how that relates to people in the Bible. But then it jumps up here and refers to, it says this, in figurative language, the term firstborn stands for what is most excellent. This expression is applied to Jesus in several New Testament passages. All of them point to Jesus' high standing and his unique relationship to his Father and the church. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to do a mini word study on the term firstborn. Look at everything you can about the Greek word, right? You may want to look up some commentaries. You can do that at BibleHub.com. Just type in Colossians 1:15. It's going to bring up all these commentaries throughout church history. See what they have to say about firstborn, and then find every verse in the New Testament that refers to Jesus as the firstborn. What does it teach you about Jesus? What does it tell you about Jesus? Right? Do a little bit of work here, and then let me continue with what this Bible dictionary says. All right? In Colossians 1:15, ding, 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 that's what we're looking at. Jesus is described as the firstborn over all creation, indicating that he existed before creation and actually participated in the creation process. In physical terms, he was the Virgin Mary's firstborn son. The phrase firstborn from the dead refers to Jesus' resurrection, which assures victory over sin and death to all who trust in him. Paul's description of Christ as firstborn among many brethren refers to his exalted position as head of the church. And then there's some more that they have to say here. Look at find all the verses in the New Testament that speaks of Jesus as the firstborn, and then just summarize what you learn about Jesus being the firstborn. Just realize it clearly can't be if it's a term that is speaking of Jesus being created, then Jesus is not the eternal Son of God. And well, then that destroys his deity. That destroys his deity completely. All right. So he would be a creation. He would not be the creator. And Jesus is the is considered deity. I mean, he's treated as deity and worshiped as deity. All right. So that just, I want you to do there's a part of me that wants to just go into full-blown teaching on it, but I just want you to really think about it and do some work on that. All right. And I'm going to do one other thing here. Give me 1 second here. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up. I'm just looking really quick here. I pulled up some of the commentaries on BibleHub.com. I just want to see if this is going to be very helpful to you. All right. Yeah, okay. Here's a good commentary here, just to kind of show you how this is played out in church history. The firstborn, or first begotten of every creature, or rather of the whole creation. They have how it's translated in Romans 8:22. Now, if you do a little mini Greek study, you're going to find. I'm trying not to do the teaching for you. I'm trying not to do the teaching for you here, okay? But this is important. According to the Arians, remember Arianism and Arius was one of the major heresies the early church had to fight against, all right? According to the Arians, the firstborn of the whole creation is the first made creature. But the reason advanced to prove the Son, the firstborn of the whole creation, overturns that sense of the passage. For surely the Son's creating all things doth not prove him to be the first made creature, unless his power of creating all things originated from his being the first made creature, which no one will affirm. As little does the Son's creating all things prove that he created himself. Yet these absurdities will be established by the apostles' reasoning. If the firstborn of the whole creation signifies the first made creature, but it is proper to observe the firstborn or first begotten in this passage may signify the heir or lord of the whole creation. For anciently, the firstborn was entitled to possess the father's estate. The firstborn was likewise lord of his brethren, who were all his servants. So in other words, what they're saying is this term demonstrates that he's the heir of all things. He's above above all of creation. That is speaking of his sovereignty, of his position, of his lordship is ultimately what it's referring to there. All right. And let me see here if there's any other important commentaries here that would be helpful. The firstborn of every creature among all the creatures of God, or over all his creation, occupying the rank and proeminence of the firstborn. The firstborn, or the oldest son among the Hebrews, as elsewhere, had special privileges. He was entitled to a double portion of the inheritance. It has been also, and especially in Oriental countries, a common thing for the oldest son to succeed to the estate and title of his father in early times. The firstborn son was the officiating priest in the family, and the absence or on the death of the father. There can be no doubt that the apostle here has referred to the usual distinctions and honors conferred on the firstborn, and means to say that among all the creatures of God, Christ occupied a preeminence similar to that. He does not say that in all respects he resembles the firstborn in a family, nor does he say that he himself was a creature, for the point of his comparison does not turn to these things, and what he proceeds to affirm respecting him is inconsistent with the idea of his being a created being himself. He wasn't a created being. He was the creator. He was the one who created, and he has a position of preeminence. The term firstborn here is about preeminence, position, the heir of all things. He's the firstborn among all those who would follow. All those of us who become saved, he is preeminent to all of us. He is above all of us. So just keep that in mind. But do a little work there. So let me give you your assignment again. Do a basic Greek word study on the term there for firstborn. Look it up. Look at all the places it occurs. Try to understand it. Then listen, find all the places in the New Testament where Jesus is called the firstborn. What do you discover? Right? Find that. Also, this is very important. Look up multiple commentaries about the term firstborn. What do they have to say? Look up firstborn in a number of dictionaries. What does this have to say? Bible dictionaries, and figure out what it all has to say. Put it all together and summarize that. this is what I want you to do. I want you to put all of that information together and try to summarize it in a very short paragraph that if someone challenged you, especially if you're dealing with a Jehovah's Witness, or someone says, no, Jesus is not the God, he's simply a God, he's the first thing God created, you can at least say, where are you getting that? And if they say, well, because he was the firstborn, you can say, hey, this is what that Greek term means, and here's how it's used, and here's how we understand it, all right? And you may have to have other scriptures that would call it into question. Is Jesus ever treated and worshiped as God? And if he is, well, then clearly he's not created. He would have to be deity, all right? Very important. Now, that wasn't even the scriptures that we were supposed to be looking at. The ones I wanted to look at is verse 16 and 17. But when you go put things in context, you stumble across other things to study, all right? Because every verse gives you years of study. But verse 16, so for by Christ, were all things created. Now stop right there. If he's created, and if he created everything, then are you saying he created himself? No, he is above all of creation because he is the creator. So for by him were all things created. And this is interesting. Jesus is accredited with creating all things. This is important. But in Genesis, God is said to be the creator of all things. How do we do that? Because one God, three distinct persons. All of the Trinity was involved in the creation of everything, all right? So for by him were all things created that are in heaven, everything that was in heaven he created, and that are in earth, visible and invisible, everything in the visible world, everything in the invisible world, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. And when I say all things in heaven, I could just be referring to the heavens. I mean, basically, well, if he created visible and invisible, that would be the angels. We could go on and on and on of all the things that were created by God. All right? Okay. So for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions, all principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. All things were created by him. All those laws that govern everything, they ultimately have to come from him. But I want you to note this. They were created by him and they were created for him. Created by him and created for him. That is a profound explanation of your whole purpose in life. It is for him. And then verse 17, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. All right? So he created everything. Everything was created by him, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. So he created everything and he sustains everything. All right? So this is Christ and his relationship to all that is created. He is the creator and he is the sustainer. But look at the next verse. I didn't even think about the next verse, but verse 18 I think is interesting. He is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. So we have Christ's relationship to the creation and Christ's relationship to the church. All right, now I got a commentary here. I'm going to read in regards to his relationship to creation. This is very important. I want you to listen to what it says here. All right. So the simple answer of who created everything is obviously it is God. The simple answer is God. But the complexity of it is brought before us when we realize that not only was the universe created and set within the parameters of the laws of physics, but it is maintained and stabilized by the upholding hand of the Creator. In today's text, the Apostle Paul wrote that by Christ were all things created that were in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. All things were created by him and for him, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. Hebrews 1:3 tells us that Christ upholds all things by the word of his power. All things exist because of him, and all things continue to function as they should by the command of Christ. Rest secure in the hands of the one who is not only creator, but also the sustainer of the world. Now, here's what I want you to do, right? Here's your assignment. First, do the little word study on the idea of firstborn. Just need to make sure you continue to strengthen your ability to deal with that term, all right? Because if you can't, cults come in and say, hey, it says he's the firstborn, right? Firstborn means created, right? Do you have a firstborn child in your home? Yeah, see, it had a beginning point, had an origin. And we're like, no, Jesus is the firstborn, first begotten. He was begotten, not made, all right? And well, you could go into all of that, okay? But you need to strengthen your understanding of that so that you can stand against those kinds of arguments, all right? And do your own study. I could do it for you right now, and maybe at some point we'll come back and do a more in-depth study of it. But I want you to work through it. And you say, I've already done that before. Do it again, all right? If your attitude's going to be, I've already studied that once in the Bible, I'm not going to do it again, I'm sorry, that's a dangerous position, because the more you study, the more you realize, oh, well, I could kind of fix that a little bit. And, I think I had that wrong, because we're always learning, all right? We learn. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't really know. Ignorance gives you the perception of knowledge. Knowledge destroys that perception. Ignorance gives you the perception of knowledge. Knowledge reveals ignorance. Ignorance makes you think you're knowledgeable. Knowledge demonstrates how ignorant you really are. It shows you how much you don't know. That's a very important concept. So you always got to go back and study. If you're operating from a position of ignorance, you're going to think you know everything. But knowledge destroys that and humbles you and shows you how ignorant you really are. The more knowledge you get, the more ignorant you realize you are. And that is, to me, a mind-blowing concept, but that's really the way it works, okay? So I want you to do that word study on firstborn. But here's what I want you to do. We have Jesus' relationship to the creation outlined here, and we have a little bit of his relationship to the church. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to try to come up with 3 very practical principles and lessons that you can take away from Jesus' relationship to the creation. He created, I can just outline 3 of them here. He created all things. All things are created for him, and he sustains all things. What can you take away from that? Practical application. Now make sure the application is consistent. It actually comes from these 3 principles. He created everything. Everything. Nothing was made without him. He created every single thing. That means he didn't create himself. If he created everything, then that means he's outside of creation. Yes, because he's eternal. He's outside of it. He created everything, all right? So he's above it. He's beyond it. He created everything. Listen, so he created everything, and everything was created for him, and he sustains everything. I want you to hear that again. He created everything. Everything was created for him, and he sustains everything. What are 3 lessons you can take from that? Or you can come up with 5, but 3 I think is fair. 3 lessons you can take from that. And make sure they come from the text. And then, what practical lesson can you take from his relationship to the church? Let's read his relationship to the church again in verse 18. He is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, and that all things he might have the preeminence. So what can you take? So really 2 ideas. Well, there's really 3 ideas there, but I'm not going to give you those. What can you take from his relationship to the church? What are some principles? Try to come up with at least, I'm going to say 3 principles you can take from Jesus' relationship to the church. How his relationship to the church and his relationship to creation. His relationship to the creation, he created all things. It was made for him, and he sustains all things. What are the practical lessons I can take from that? 3 practical lessons, and try to come up with 3 practical lessons that you can take and you can write down, and Christ's relationship to the church. Practical lessons, right? Practical lessons you can take from that. Applications, we'll call them applications. What are some applications you can derive from it? You may have to work on it, right? You can send them to me at newsif@yahoo.com. Members of Victory Baptist Church, please post them in the chat, please. That's why it's there. And there you go. I'm just going to stop right there. Oh, there's so much more. I'm doing everything in my power not to just go into full-blown teaching mode. But if I do that, then I'm doing it for you, and we're not doing it together. All right. So I'm going to do a lot more meditate. That's a powerful section right there. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. I mean, woo. I'm already trying to outline the whole passage, and I'm thinking, and my brain's going a million seconds, going a million miles per hour. It's just, man, about a million thoughts are coming at me per second. And I'm trying to put it all together. But there you go. I'm just going to stop because I'm going to start teaching, and I don't want to do that. It's a powerful passage of Scripture. So I didn't just hand you a snack. I just handed you a 5-course meal. Dig in. Start working on that, meditate on it, and tell me what you learned today. And if you have any struggles with that term firstborn, let me know. Go, and I would challenge you to do this. Find a copy of the Nicene Creed. And just remind yourself of what the Nicene Creed says, because that whole concept is addressed. And the Council of Nicaea is one of the things that they were trying to fight against was the heresy of Arianism. And well, we've talked about that before. All right, there you go. Enjoy, and you can thank me, right? All right, I will accept your thank you. All right, everyone have a great day. Dig into the Scriptures. God bless.